All right, good morning. We'll get underway. Welcome. This is the 2026-27 annual plan. We originally were going to have a fees and charges conversation today, but this is going to be more of a just a general conversation around the rates and around consultation, whether or not we do go out to consult. I'll pass over to Mandy to kick things off.
Thank you for that. So I will just run through where we got to when I wrote this paper around where we need some direction for clarity on engagement. We have got a paper coming this afternoon, which offers a recommendation, and that paper was written some weeks ago. And so that recommendation at that point is whether it's not to engage, but that was when we were looking at the rates of 9%. So if we look at anything above that, we may need to consider whether it is appropriate to engage or consult with the community on a higher than 9% rate rise. So I think I'll just go through the engagement conversation, and then I'll hand over to Amanda to talk about rates options. When we consider whether we engage or consult, though, we need to make sure that we have a real clarity on what we are seeking feedback on. We need to be really clear, and if we do decide to go out and engage with the community, we need to be really aware of what timeline we've got now with the legislative requirement to adopt by the 30th of June. Doesn't allow a lot of time. We would want to probably go out for more than 1 week, because 1 week doesn't seem genuine. I think we'd need to be going out for at least a 2-week period. We don't have to go out for a 4-week, which is what's required under a special consultative procedure. It's any time that we choose to do. But if you want to get feedback that impacts on what our decision will be, that gives us that time to get that feedback from the community, depending on the topic, you're going to get most of your feedback either right at the start or right near the end. So that's the two high points, is on opening, on closing. So that period in the middle is actually quite a lull in any consultation feedback. So it doesn't really matter how long. It's going to be the start and the close where you're going to get it, but we've got to give enough time to be able to get out there. And if you want to have some community and conversations as well, allowing time for that and allowing time for those to be established. We just need to make sure that when we do go out and we engage with the community, that feedback is used genuinely. We're about to go out soon after, when we get the timeline sorted forward, to go out, and we will be communicating with our community again on and wanting their feedback to help shape our long-term plan. And that's really a big change on our direction as we go out there with our long-term plan, because of the changes through local government. We really need their feedback, and we don't want anybody to see approaching them now regarding our annual plan is disingenuous, because it is so important to get the feedback now and again, and for other consultations that we're going out with in the coming months. I have put there on that first slide there, an impact of that if we go out is that we won't be able to start that work on the long-term plan or bring that to you. We are starting that work in the background, but we won't be able to bring it forward to you until probably after adoption of the annual plan now, whereas I had hoped to get some information forward through to you all in May, but that will have to be deferred because of the other stuff that has to happen with consultation. It just doesn't, it's not an immediate turn on and we just back down. It's a continual drive for all of us to be involved. I think, as I said today, we've got the meeting this afternoon where I will need clear direction on engaging. And I've put there on your tables today, and I apologise that it wasn't in the pack set, because it was kind of a conversation that evolved yesterday, is if we did go out to engage, I've put a timeline there, and it is a fairly short and tight one, because we also, if we do decide to go out there and engage with the community, we do also need to adopt that consultation or engagement paper and the supporting information. So it's quite a stage that we've got to go through. So reports for that will be due in draft by the 16th of April, which is 2 days away. But I would not probably be able to get all the supporting information ready for that by the 16th. The final's not due to the following week, so we'd anticipate to have that ready for then. And then we would need to also know by the end of this week, if we do proceed with the decision this morning to engage, we'd need to lock in those community engagement dates, and if you choose to do Facebook Live as well, lock those in so that we can start promoting those, because that's really important. As I said, everyone might be aware of what we're doing, But if we don't get the promotions out there and everything to support it, then people don't know to turn up. So yeah, I've just put an agenda there. I'm happy to work through it, or I could simply pass on to Amanda or take any questions at this point.
So we'll look for questions. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Randy, thank you very much for the engagement timeline and delivery points you've presented. And clearly this implies that the document will be a consultation document rather than one that simply informs. I see no particular problem with that shorter consultation period, particularly if there is, or if there are the 3 community meetings that you've identified. The one thing that I do question is the fact that you've set aside on Tuesday, the 19th of May, a workshop for us to consider submissions, deliberate and give directions, but you haven't allowed any, well, the timing doesn't have any allowance for hearings. Since we are meeting on that day, why have we chosen not to allow people to speak to us as well as us to deliberate on the matters raised in the document?
I'll take that one if you will. So essentially this is a bit of a plan because obviously the recommendation to council in the meeting next is around not going out to engagement. We are looking at some of the conversations we're having around the level of potential increase and thinking that's probably not a wise move. So this is just a suggestion of if we decide to go in a different direction, what it could look like. We can finesse this, and I guess it's also just being really clear on the timeframes that we do have and how much space we have in diaries and things, because I guess with all the water changes that we've had up to date, we are well behind the 8 ball when it comes to the annual plan. So our timeframes are really shortened. But if we want to go out and consult, we can find a way to do that. But there may need to be some compromises in that, and we need to just work out what's realistic and what's not realistic. So this isn't necessarily a Mandy says this is what we must do. This is a guide to start the conversation with, which I think is a really good place to start.
Just based on what you've just said, Madam Chair, I presume the final decision is going to be substantially influenced by the legal advice that we received yesterday.
I think absolutely. If we look to the legal advice, and just for those that may not be aware of what that conversation is, around what level of rates increase we can be discussing and at what stage we need to go talk to the community, we have gone out to get advice on. Because a lot of the conversations we're having isn't about the level of service or us doing anything different. It is us managing the cost envelope and within the activities we're already told community that we were going to do. So essentially we're looking at how we handle the cost increases and some of the underfunded depreciation, and at what level we have to go out to the community to talk when we haven't got a lot we can change. And that's probably where our issue lies, that these cost implications are things that we probably can't make a lot of change to and still balance the books in any way. So that is certainly, so we have gone out to get legal opinion on that, and legal opinion essentially does talk about being within your fiscal envelopes and things like that there. So I think what becomes a little bit obvious is a big change we need to go and talk to our community about, and so we just need to work out how we message around where the changes come from and why, and what decisions we really have in front of us. Right, councillors, is there any other questions just on the engagement piece up till now? So am I taking from that, sorry, Mandy, I'll pass back to you.
I'd just like to add that, if we are going out on a range of rates options, if that's what we do decide to go out and engage with the community on, it also may be more appropriate that the forum for people to come and share their thoughts on a variation in rates may be in a community meeting. They may feel more comfortable going to community meetings than actually coming and talking to the formal forum as well. So you have to provide the opportunity for community to go and engage with their elected members and share their opinions, and that may be the right forum, which is why sort of part of that's in there as well. Timing as well as that forum, so that's something to consider at the same time as what's that right forum, depending on what we're going out there on.
Yeah, I think we certainly don't always get a breadth of our community views through the formal consultation process. And I think while this is an avenue for that, I think there's also further things that we can and should be doing to get out in the community and talk to people about what we're dealing with at council and what our planning is moving forward, how we work our way out of the challenging situation we're in, and then I guess what that future for local government piece could look like as well. So there's a whole lot at play here. So I think that conversation with our community is likely to be a lot more than just the annual plan as well. Right, so in the engagement space, noting that we do have a meeting next to talk about landing what our decision is on that. Is there any other questions in that space? Rebecca, sorry.
No, sorry, there's obviously like the legal requirements that come with a legislative process around consultation. But if that was not to happen, like what flexibility is there for us to just kind of do what we want, like as in give people the opportunity to still come in, but not in a formal kind of way? Like is there flexibility there, or does that sort of blur the lines of what is consultation, what is not? And like are there any legal challenges there?
It's up to council to decide how they want to structure any form of engagement and consultation and how far they want to take it, whether you inform only, whether you engage, and how you style it. There's nothing that says you must, it does say that you must provide that opportunity for people to share their feedback, and doing that on an online platform or via Haukapi is one way. Having those community meetings is another. They don't have to come in to have it informal. They don't have to share how they're feeling here or what their wants and desires are here. It can be at a community meeting. It's really up to council. I mean, some people will say, oh, actually, if you want to send a video in, you can do videos, and they do them by anyway. It is up to you how you want to shape it. It is your decision. It is your engagement, and it's your community. So we just try and support you doing what you feel best. Yeah.
Sorry, just supplement. So you're speaking about if we're doing that, we could still do that outside of the formal consultation process.
Yeah. You mean in surplus too, in addition, or at any other time?
Like inform only, but we can still do that.
Yes,
sort of thing.
correct, absolutely. There's no bounds. The only thing is if you are going out on a special consultative procedure, which is what you have to go out for long-term plan, and we'll be going out soon on Class 4 gambling, which is also under a special consultative procedure. There's rules around that it be a minimum of 4 weeks, but how you shape that again is up to council's requirements and council's community. Every community is different, so we've got different needs. So yeah.
All right, Councillor Hopkins.
Question, Mandy, if I may, through you, Madam Chair. I can't immediately see any obvious difference in terms of outcome between an informal process that may or may not be challenged by audit and slightly more formal annual plan consultation process, because in each case, what we're going to end up with is feedback from the community saying, what a brilliant idea, or, hey, that's daft, don't do it. Am I right?
You're absolutely right. And that is why we seek feedback in a natural, in the way that reaches our community the most, because we want their feedback to tell us exactly how they feel and, to tell us their views, their opinions, or their votes, whatever the case may be, however we choose to structure it. That's why, it's saying that the feedback to be shared may be better at a community hearing, rather than coming to a formal setting if people wanted hearings or not. Is that the right forum for this conversation? But yeah, we just want to hear from people. If that's what we choose to do, it's all about just getting that feedback and using that as we go forward for shaping our decisions.
Councillor Fountain.
We do have quite a challenging situation to get out of. Can we use the consultation to really communicate in plain language exactly that problem, and say you've got the range of rates, but also have things like this is how close to the debt cap we get this year and things like that, really sort of narrow it down to those key issues.
Absolutely. And where we talked initially about going out for inform only, it would be the same approach. You know, it's got to be the simple language. It's got to be understandable by our community, by our wide community. We've had conversations in here, and Amanda will talk about some of those options shortly. But it does have to be communicated in simple language. We want to keep it a fairly small document and just have supporting information with that available online. But just sort of showing those challenges haven't just developed overnight. We want to explain that story, but we want people to be able to relate to it, to understand it, so that when they make their choice on what the right option is for council, if we decide to go out and engage, if that's the decision made today, then it's them understanding why they're choosing the option that they choose. Or yeah.
Thank you. I just want to make the point that we don't mixing two things up here.
Hey, sorry, Councillor Slack, I'll get you to put your mic on again. Thank you.
Apologies. I just want to make the point we're not mixing two things up here. On the one hand, we have a decision to make on consultation. The other one is about engagement. And in my view, there are two different things. And if we go to consultation, what I understand what you've said, we've only got a very narrow band of time to conduct that consultation. And if I think of how many meetings and workshops we have already had and the amount of emails and gone backwards and forwards to understand all the parameters and implications of this, I actually question whether the consultation in such a short period of time would be effective, opposed to a good engagement with the public that explains why we are actually deviating from the LTP, and we're particularly talking about rates here and rates rises, instead of actually changing the key elements of the LTP dealing with what we are going to do.
I guess just to pick up on that one, Councillor Slack, and you did right. There is two things at play here, and I think that it's very much pinned to our next conversation when we start talking about the level of rates increase, and you know, there's certain conversations we can have or decisions we can make that will mean that consultation is probably more recommended. And when we look at our legal advice, it's probably something that we almost need to do. That's arguable, but it's tough not to, I think, in this environment. And when other decisions are going to be a lot closer to what our indicated level of increase were attached to last year's LTP. And if we take that opportunity, then it's more talking to our community and engagement in that explaining of where things are at. But yeah, there's give and takes, and I think that this conversation is going to feed straight into the next part of the conversation we have, which is landing in Amanda's space a bit more, which is what our options are around numbers. And at the end of this, or end of our decision-making sort of space around the annual plan, we are going to need to land on something, but perhaps part of the consultation, if we were higher than we would like to be, needs to be also around the options and the numbers that we land on and why, to give people an opportunity to also indicate to us what they see as a fair and reasonable approach to setting our rates. And if there's no one else, that being said, I will pass on to Amanda to start the next part of that conversation.
Okay, I've got a few brief slides I'm going to share. So this just provides a bit of a background. I'll try and step through it slow enough, but also want to leave enough time at the end for a bit of discussion and questions, because it's not entirely straightforward. Oops. Okay, so just a bit of a background. Obviously, we adopted our long-term plan in June last year, and that set our budgets for the 9 years for the 26 financial year, which is what we're currently in. And now we're looking at the 27 financial year, which is starts in 1 July and goes to 30 June 27. So we will, as Mandy touched on, we will be looking at our 10-year budgets again next year. But before then, we need to have a really good look at this 27 financial year and produce an annual plan. So that's what happens in the intervening years of in between preparing LTPs. So I want to have a bit of an update on where the 27 budgets are looking, what's changed from what we set in the long-term plan for that year, what we can control, what we can't control. And then we'll get on to the couple of issues around what that means for rates rises and a discussion around unfunding depreciation on Three Waters. So in terms of operating costs, basically the process has been we picked up the 27 budget that we set in the LTP that we'd been through with a fine-tooth comb for about a 20-month process of setting the long-term plan. We picked that up. I've discussed with all of the departmental managers. We've had a good hard look at where we're sitting so far this financial year, had our best guess to what that means for next financial year. There's a lot of inflationary pressures that we've seen come through in the 26 financial year, so we've had to recognise that in 27. There's the fuel cost thing on the horizon. Electricity's gone up. Interest rates are starting to look like they're going to head the other way. Cost of contractors and materials for maintaining crucial infrastructure and facilities. So it's much like everyone, individual ratepayers, their day-to-day household bills all increasing. Ours are at a much higher level. Like our costs of maintaining our infrastructure and facilities are really high. There's a lot of fuel and electricity and insurance costs that goes in there. And they're not standard 3% inflationary rate increases each year. But we've had a good hard look at those budgets. We're maintaining our levels of service across the board. We're not looking to do anything flashy or increase facilities more or do anything different than we have in the past, keeping our roading maintenance at the same level. And we've tried to reduce wherever possible. So we've tried to rein them in. Any unnecessary costs or nice to haves have been pulled right back. And yeah, so we've landed in a similar position for our operating costs. We've just proposed a 2% increase from what was set in the long-term plan. In terms of capital projects, we've been through a massive process trying to get our water services delivery plan approved by the DIA. As part of that process, we've had to include extra capital projects that weren't originally in our long-term plan. And we also have projects from this current financial year, 2026, that are not going to be complete by 30 June 26. So they're instead being added into the 27 financial year. They were a necessity in 26. We haven't got them done. So they're going to be included in 27. So that's increased our Three Waters capital work to 37 million in the long-term plan. And that's against the 37 million in the annual plan, and we had predicted 16 million in the long-term plan. So that just shows the degree of increase of the work that we're going to have to do in that Three Waters space before we hand over the assets to the new organisation on 1 July 27. In terms of the roading program, it hasn't changed too much from what we proposed in the long-term plan, and also it's a typical $10 million program each year. The grandstand has been approved, so that project is in there for the 27 financial year. And then we have other projects totaling about 3.5 million. We've been through that list, and a lot of what some people feel are nice to haves have been removed, deferred to later years, or removed altogether. So that brings a total capital program of 57.9 million, which is huge. Our program this year was 60 million, but that also included, like, we had second half of the event centre was being made this year, and it was quite external to our normal capital program. We had the Forester Gallery and the Kakinui Bridge. So they were quite one-off significant projects, made up half of that, and 30 million was our standard capital program. So to look at 57.9 next year is going to be huge. And a lot of that is debt funded as well. So we were projecting in our long-term plan to be at 140% of our debt cap, and the LGFA cap is 175%. So it's cutting into our capacity. The more capital that we need to do and debt fund, it's increasing further to that 175%. So our current forecasts with that 57.9 million capex, we're looking at increasing to 166% of our debt cap. So that's a worry. And also there's a change to our opening position. So our 27 financial year hasn't panned out as we budgeted to. We know that we are about 9 million behind where we wanted to be on our bottom line right now. Our revenue hasn't been as high as we expected, and our expenditure has been higher than expected. So both of those things have contributed to us being in a loss position at this point in time, and we predict that will continue to 30 June. So that just means it puts us in the back foot from where we thought we would be starting the 27 financial year. Obviously, costs have continued to rise. We build in the inflationary rates that we're provided, and all councils use the same inflationary rates in preparing the LTP, but we've found that in reality they have been higher than we've budgeted for. So our opening position is not where we're expected to be, and as I've pointed out, our debt cap, we're getting closer than we thought. So where we had budgeted in a long-term plan, we had budgeted a 7% rates rise, but as part of that, we made a resolution to not balance our budget. So that means our revenue was lower than our expenditure by $14 million. So we had a $14 million loss in the budgets that we put in our long-term plan for the 27 financial year. So that was going to be doable. We'd resolved that that was a one-off and that was financially prudent to get us through this year at as lower cost to ratepayers as possible, because we knew that on 1 July 27, when Three Waters moves to another entity, we would have more debt capacity, we would have more room in our rating structure. So yeah, we knew we always knew 27 was going to be tough. We knew that we were going to have a $14 million loss. We resolved to do that. We felt that that was financially prudent for that financial year, and then it would kind of right itself in the 28 financial year. But now, given everything that I've just talked about, the operating costs increasing, the extent of our capital projects that we must do to meet the water services delivery plan requirements. We can't submit a water services delivery plan that is different to our budget. We can't say to the DIA, here's our water services delivery plan that you wanted, with $37 million of capex, and then in our budget not have that $37 million of capex. And obviously our 26 position where we're at right now is not where we want to be. So that's putting us even more on the back foot going into that 27 financial year. So that's a lot of information. Should I stop? Is there any questions at that point? Do you want me to move into options?
Well, first of all, before we do move into options, I will take a few questions just to put a line there, and then we can move into what the options look like. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Amanda, with regards to the amount of work being carried over into the 27 year, presumably funding's already in place for that, or was that set to be loan funded and we haven't drawn down on that just yet?
Yeah, so there's about 14.5 million of largely waters projects. There is a couple of mil of roading within that, and that was largely to be debt funded. Yep.
Amanda, just try. I have a number of questions that perhaps can be asked later. Are you happy to answer questions that relate to the email you sent out to us in response to Councillor Fleck's questions? You'll come to those later, but I'm just trying to get my head around what you've just said. Looking at that very bottom line, to consider increasing rates to cover expenditure and reduce the $14 million net loss. So are we, as of this moment, talking about a $14 million net loss as per the LTP, or is it now a $23 million net loss because of the $9 million shortfall you've just identified in this year's budgets?
No, they're independent things. So the they're independent things. So the shortfall in this year's budget, we're having to fund by rates and by debt and other ways, and that is going to mean that our opening balance sheet is lower. So our equity, our reserves, we're dipping into those, or we're using debt. So our balance sheet is not looking as good, but our P&L, our income and expenditure, resets for the next financial year. So we're still forecasting a $14 million loss that year. This loss this year doesn't affect the loss next year. It just affects our opening balance sheet. So it means we won't have as much cash, we won't have as much reserves, our debt is higher to the cap. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Just to be clear, the situation we are confronting today is precisely and exactly the same as we said it would be in the long-term plan. With regard to the forecast loss.
Currently, it is the same as the forecast loss. We haven't moved operating expenditure too much. We have found inflationary increases. There's 2% of extra expenditure. We're proposing increased rates to cover that. So we would still have a $14 million loss. So if there's 2% extra expenditure, increase your rates rise from 7 to 9%, that covers that. Still have $14 million loss. My concerns that I'm raising to you are we're very low on reserves. We know we're not depreciating Three Waters. Our depreciation reserves, some of them are negative. Our debt is nearing the cap. We do not have much headroom if we keep going this direction next financial year. It was already going to be tight. We're talking a huge capital program next year, 57 mil. That's going to add an extra 20 million onto our debt forecast and mean that I only have about 7 million worth of capacity before we hit the debt cap at the end of next financial year. 7 million in the scheme of things, it may seem huge, but our creditors bill on the 20th of each month is typically around 6 million. So like our insurance for the year is over $1 million. Our petrol costs are in the hundreds of thousands each month, our electricity. So 7 million is a very small amount in terms of the whole council project picture. So yeah, I'm more concerned about the balance sheet. We don't have any levers to pull if anything goes wrong. If that $14 million loss actually turns out to be much higher, if fuel costs go up slightly, it could put millions on our P&L. We know it's going to go up, and we haven't budgeted for that. If anything happens, we don't have, if the major event happens, we don't have any capacity. If I've only got 7 million spare to borrow, LGFA will not borrow any more than that. It's just we have no backup. We've got a multi-million dollar loss, and our balance sheet is very thin. That's my concern.
I guess just to respond to you, Councillor Hopkins, and this is a conversation we're going to have and decide where we all sit, because it's not a comfortable conversation. But when we discuss about a 14 million net lost that was resolved as being a one-off and financially prudent, what we're seeing now in the environment we're looking at with increases in a huge number of areas, fuel being one of them, but just across the board, is that to lock that in and to look at what's in the future without actually adjusting our budgets to that at all is no longer probably financially prudent. And we need to probably look at what we did last year and go, is that still the best starting point to start our budgets on? So there is going to be, I guess, the big conversations in front of us that Amanda will touch on what our options are. We unfunded Three Waters depreciation last year, and we've got another year where it's handed on. We've got to discuss what issues that's going to have and what that looks like when we hand it over to Three Waters. So that's a conversation for us to have, and there's massive cost implications in whatever we decide there. Whether or not we fund that deficit is what situation we leave our cash reserves in for the next year, and ability to actually respond to any events that might happen in the community, and just acknowledging looking forward that with things like inflation, cost of fuel, to think that we're going to be sitting on the same level of budgets that we thought we were going to 12 months ago when the long-term plan was set. The world is a very different place, and we all know that. And I don't think that we can knowingly walk into that space and not actually say to staff, we acknowledge that the costs will rise because fuel all by itself is going to make sure of that, and we're going to give us capacity to handle that. The other options are, what do we cut? Because that's where we're at with little in the way of reserve. So what was financially prudent last year is arguably not this year. Sorry, I'll pass back to you, Amanda. Sorry, Councillor Hopkins, another question.
Yeah, thank you for that, Madam Chair. And I mean, those are obviously matters that I think we can discuss later. I do have a question about depreciation that, are you happy for that to be raised now? Amanda, you mentioned the fact that these depreciation increases are part of the issue that we confront. And clearly, the impact of depreciation on residents, ratepayers and councils is either an intended or unintended consequence of central government policy, and may well actually result in the demise of smaller councils. But I'm curious to know, the figures you have provided simply don't tally with my historic expectation and understanding of our circumstance. The email you sent out says that we currently have total depreciation reserves for 3 waters of 14.9 million. Now that's radically lower than what I, as an elected member, have been led to believe was the case. We've had conversations over the years about the need to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant and the water treatment plant here in Oamaru, and been told that we're tucking money away every year so that come 2050 we'll have the 50 million or 30 million or whatever that's needed. And I have proceeded on the basis that that's happening quite happily.
I will just stop you there, just because when you're talking about what you're led to believe, I think that's a wee bit misleading. I think we've got to be really careful in how we do talk about that, because it's not that it's led to believe, which leads to misleading. I think the conversation more is how long we depreciate for, over what term, when we started depreciation. So while we may be depreciating some options and only have chosen to unfund certain options, there's other ones that we might have funded for the last 50 years, but they've actually been in action for the last 100 years, and we haven't played the catch up on those. So there's a whole lot of different ballparks you're talking about here. And I don't think it's about, this isn't information we've had. It's just that we believe we're funding to the appropriate level. But when it comes to the actual cash reserves to make the changes now with increases to the costs of what things are, we are finding we don't have enough, and we have also unfunded, and we unfunded again last year quite a bit of our depreciation in the 3 water space.
Look, I take the point you're making, but what I was trying to say was I had a clear view of the quantum of money set aside, and I also had a clear view that things were more or less under control in terms of the process of accumulating the funds needed for major expenditure in the middle of the century. What Amanda is saying in this email she sent out is that that's not the case.
To be fair, I believe when we started talking 3 waters and costs back when I was last on council 4 years ago, plus that, these were highlighted back then as being a looming crisis that we were walking towards, and we were still underplaying at that stage because there wasn't any legislation on the table to understand what we were going to have to step into as a council. So while we may have thought we were being prudent at that stage, with the fair level of increase in spend that's required for us as a council, our depreciation reserves will not cut the mustard. Amanda.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I have been raising since my time here, the last 3 years, that our reserves are getting very low. I've been emphasising that. Where we have had, we've been loss making and had limited other levers to pull, we've been dipping into our reserves. So I think everyone knows that we have been dipping into those depreciation reserves to complete reactive maintenance. So where something breaks and we need drinking water for the community, there's no other levers to pull. Also, when you use preventative maintenance, so you could dip into your depreciation reserves now, and that adds extra life, like you're going above and beyond repairing it, so that may add extra life to an asset. So that's a good time to use your depreciation reserves. So while we have always been putting money aside for the depreciation reserves up until this financial year, we have also been utilising them. And then as Mel pointed out, we haven't depreciated the full life. So where it's a 100-year asset when we might have only been doing it for 20 or 30 years. So we don't have the full pool of funds set aside for it anyway. And also Mel also touched on the cost increases. So where something might have cost us $10 million in 2020, we know that there's been over 30% increases, valuation increases, some of them close to 40%. So we don't have enough funds set in those reserves for the future replacement.
Now, just for how we move on, because I do have Councillor McCone, but what I'm really mindful of is we've got a meeting starting at 10 a.m. 10:15. We'll get the timing right. And in that, we've got a decision to make on whether or not we do go out to consult. And I think whether or not we go out to consult really does sit on what level of increase we are looking for. So I think what we need to do is move now to the options. Is that okay, Councillor McCone, or would you like to raise first? I'll go to you first, Councillor McCone, just mindful of time. Then we'll move into options, because essentially what we do need to do is, while we might not land on an option by any stretch, because it's really just indication, we're not making decisions today on a level, but we need to basically decide, is this going to be more than, say, the 9% that would cover the departmental cost increases? And if it is going to be more, then that probably does land us into a different conversation. So that's where we do need to land for our 10:15 meeting. So Councillor McCone.
Yeah, just clarification, Amanda. So when you say we've got operational reserves, that we're talking about the cash flow of the rates taken into house. We couldn't go to the bank and say we've got 10 million in there we can chuck in here. We are borrowing everything outside what we take of the rates take annually. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so just showing on this slide here, a net profit loss that we table out to the side. We, although we've always budgeted to make profits, we have been loss making in the majority of the years, and this year we're no different. So that cuts into our reserves. So we're using up our reserves because we still have to pay our costs. Like the bills are in front of us, we still have to pay that, and we can't change our rates or pull any other levers to increase our revenue after it's been set. So where we don't have enough money to cover our costs, we use our reserves, we use debt, anything we possibly can. And then that's just meant that our operating reserves were actually, the total was negative in the balance sheet last year.
So the reserves are typically annually funded by the rates taken.
Yes, they should be. Just like depreciation, you should be taking a bit extra each year, putting it aside in reserves, and they should be nice and healthy for when you need them down the track. But they're negative. The operating reserves were negative at 30 June 25, as noted in the balance sheet of our annual report.
Okay, so Amanda, I wonder if we walk into the main options that we have been talking about, because I think that's probably where we want to start the conversation. And that's where you see the option one sitting there is our 9% increase. So that is looking at basically looking at budgets now, what the departmental increase would be looking like if we just covered that cost. So that would be a 9% increase. The deficit would remain the same. What it does mean is if we see a whole lot of cost rise, we are leaving ourselves with zero or very little, not zero, but very little breathing space. But I'll pass back to you, Amanda, just to walk through the other options there.
Yep. So option 2 is where we increase rates by that 2%, because that cost is going to come. We're going to have to pay those bills. So all of these options have included increasing the rates by 2%, from 7 to 9. And then option 2 also adds 18% to fund the Three Waters depreciation, which we've slightly talked about. So we didn't fund Three Waters depreciation of 9 mil this financial year 26, and we are proposing, in the LTP, we're proposing not to fund it in the 27 financial year either, assuming that when the new water CCO takes it on, they can sort it out what they want to do at that end. And noting that our depreciation reserves are low anyway. option 3, the $14 million deficit is made up of that 9 million unfunding waters depreciation, and then 5 mil is just where your revenue is not covering your day-to-day expenditure. So option 3 is suggesting covering that 5 million day-to-day expenditure. So a total 19% increase, the 7% that we've currently got, an extra 2 plus 10 to cover that 5 million of the operating deficit. So that means we'll still have an operating deficit of 9 million, which just represents not funding for waters depreciation. Option 4, so this is the same as above, but we have also put an extra 8% to cover additional costs now predicted. That's basically because in the process over the last month since I've had the conversations with department managers and been through all of the budgets with ELT, we've had the news about fuel and we have no idea, but just from our experience in previous years and where we're sitting in this financial year, we know that our costs are always increasing higher than we expect. And so we have just put in an additional increase there to recognise that costs are going to go up next year, with a lot of it being around fuel. Fuel is a massive cost to our organisation. A lot of our day-to-day maintenance, like you think of the roading maintenance program, our parks, most things we do require fuel. So yeah, it's going to be a huge increase to us. We don't know what yet, but that's just a suggestion there to put in some extra increase for those unforeseen costs. And then option 5 is all of the above, and that will completely remove the $14 million deficit. So you'll fund the 3 waters depreciation of 9 mil, you'll fund the other 5 mil operating deficit, and then adding those extra costs for the fuel shortage. So that would be getting us hopefully back to surplus.
Right.
And then this is a table that shows it.
Thank you, Amanda. Right, I've got a few councillors waiting to speak. Councillor Holding, then Councillor Lewis.
Sorry, Amanda, can you just remind me that the 5 million, reducing that 5 million is not actually specifically one thing, it's just deciding not, is that one thing, or is that just deciding not to?
It's not one particular thing, it's just where your revenue is $5 million shorter of your day-to-day costs, like paying your staff and all your operating costs of everything.
Councillor Lewis.
Through the chair, thanks, Amanda. Just a quick question with regards to that 8% on option 4. Is that going into the operational budget, or is that as a contingency? So is it day to day, or is it, is it being seen as we've got extra money?
I would build it into the operating costs. So where we see it hitting would be those contracts that I mentioned, the roading maintenance contracts, the parks contracts we've talked about. In the power, we've talked about other direct costs like pipes that are produced with fuel. Yeah, so we'd look to have a harder look at those operating costs where fuel is most likely directly going to hit us. And that 8% is that's a $4 million increase in our operating budget. So it's material, but it could be even higher than that. We have no idea.
Councillor Cowling.
So the 45% would include the increase, or the best guess as to what the increase on the fuel would be, but does it also include things like the electricity and other non-fuel related increases, or would that 45% still risk a deficit at the end of the year?
The 45% includes the extra costs, the interest increase, inflationary increase. So it's this wee table here shows it. So our 7% starting point, what we've budgeted in the long-term plan, add the 2% extra for those costs across departments, and recognising interest rates are likely to increase. The 10% to fund the 5 mil operating deficit, 18% to fund the 9 mil 3 waters depreciation, and then 8% to recognise potential fuel and other inflationary increases of about 4 million. So that's how you get to that 45.
Councillor McCone, and then Councillor Slack.
Amanda, do these figures include the debt repayments, or is it only the interest on what we will be owing as hardcore capital debt?
So these are just the interest, it's just the operating costs. Behind the scenes, we have a schedule of debt repayment that we make, but as a whole, council is borrowing more for our new capital work each year than repaying debt. So on the face of our accounts, you won't see debt repayment because we are borrowing at a higher rate than we're repaying. So our net position as a borrower.
So as far as that goes, for annually, we're trying to cover our costs, but we're actually not covering the cost of our borrowings to cover that cost, if that makes sense.
We've had crazy cost pressures for the last, well, since COVID. So we haven't been in a position to make any headway on our debt like we would have liked. Like obviously this council its debt position has grown a lot in the last 10 years. We will have in 2031, we'll have a significant debt repayment by North Otago Irrigation. So that would hopefully go towards debt repayment. When Waters moves to a new entity, that entity will take the full value of the assets, and it will also take the debt that is related to those assets. So when it takes over that debt in its name, we will be able to make debt repayment then, and then we'll be able to right size our balance sheet and have better opportunity.
I'm going to go to Councillor Slack.
Then, Amanda, just to close out the whole free waters depreciation from what you just said, well, you know, come the 1st of July, it's going to be their problem to sort out. I know that is tongue in cheek. But correct me, please, if I'm wrong here, but also for everybody's understanding. If we do not fund free waters depreciation, then basically the effect of that will be on the net value of our water assets, which then has an effect on our investment, if you like, into free waters. And that's it. That is how we have to see it. Yeah? Is that correct?
That is correct. So in our long-term plan, we budgeted on 1 July 27, the full value of the assets. I can't remember the exact figures, but it was around 450 million worth of waters assets, and I think we're budgeting around 50 million worth of debt related to those waters, so that net position 450 minus 50 is $400,000. That is the value of the three waters assets across our district that will now be held in the waters CCO. That value will be recognised as an investment, the 400K on our balance sheet. So if we were to fund for depreciation, that 9 million will make a slight difference to that 400, so it might be 409. That is the difference. It's a balance on our balance sheet, recognising the value that we hold in that three waters CCO for the asset value at that time, that point in time. That investment, and under legislation, we don't get a dividend. We don't get any return on that. That value just sits there on the balance sheet. So it doesn't make too much of a difference to us, whether it's 400, 409. The big thing that will make a difference, they'll be getting a valuation every 3 years. So we've seen our valuations can go, we had $105 million Three Waters valuation a couple of years ago. That's going to make the big difference in our investment.
400 million, not 400,000.
400 million.
Now, I'm just going to park questions for a moment because I think what we need to do is be really clear on what we need to provide direction on today and what we don't. We're not going to be landing on our figure and what that looks like today. There's work still to be done and that will come to a future meeting. But what we do need to land on is enough of understanding of where our bands around the figure lie in our conversation to determine what level of engagement or consultation we need to do. So I guess when I look around at the moment, are we feeling like each of us have an idea on whether or not you feel the need to consult or engage with the community for our meeting in about 20 minutes? Or is there, that's where I want to pitch the conversation now, which I'm looking at you, Councillor McCone. I know you've got your hand up. Is that around that part of the conversation? at the moment, because that's what I need to land before we run out of time. Go for it.
So if we look at the two higher options of 27 and 45%, where does that leave our options for borrowing further down the track? Because we'll be hitting our debt limits if we don't go to that far.
So the 175 debt cap is our total debt divided by our total revenue. So if we right size our revenue, that gives us more debt cap. So while we'll still be borrowing to that level to fund that capex that we're proposing for next financial year, our total revenue will increase. So we'll have a higher proportion of headroom.
The Irishman called Murphy, who said when you get on your knees, you know, that's pretty bad, but usually they hit you behind the head with a shovel and you got to take some more. So I suggest we go and buy a snorkel looking at this stuff.
I'm not quite sure what to take from that. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Madam Chair, an answer to your question and a question to Amanda. My answer to your question is, I think based on what we've heard today and the explanations, and perhaps the sense of anxiety, concern, and maybe surprise experienced around the table, it would be, in my view, entirely proper to invite the community to share views on the options that Amanda has presented. So in other words, I would favour consultation, and I think that is actually essentially what is provided to us as advice in the legal opinion we've received. The question I have for Amanda, you said before we have a deficit this year of, or we're behind budget by 9 million. So where does this operating deficit of 5 million come from? If that's a silly question, I'm sorry, but my head is full of numbers now and I can't make them all work.
Yeah, so the 9 million is where we're behind this financial year to date. So we have $9 million higher cost than expenditure. The 5 million is next year. So starting fresh next year. Totally unrelated.
Right. Wasn't quite a simple question, but it came close.
So I guess looking around the table, are we all at a stage that we feel we can make a decision based on in the next meeting about whether or not we engage? And is there any other questions anyone has in that space? Do we want to go further than that and ask whether or not we're wanting to create a recommendation that's going to come to our next meeting on our engagement level? Or do we want to leave that to the next meeting? Yes.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to move that the
I'm not calling for movements now. You're
what's it now?
No, what I'm saying is,
Oh, okay.
do we want to discuss that now? We need to, in the next meeting, if we're changing the recommendation that's there, we need to probably be prepared for that and make sure we've got something that's going to be in front of us that's actually workable for staff and is really clear on what we're trying to achieve. So I guess what I'm probably sensing is that a 9%, and I'm not wanting to put any words in anyone's mouth here, a 9% is already probably at the limit of whether or not we should be talking to our community because it's substantially different from what we originally indicated. I'm thinking that to be prudent in our finances, we're likely going to need to go higher than that, is my feel. And therefore, from my perspective, I do think we need to have a conversation with our community where we have a place for them to input back into that. And I think part of these and unpacking these is probably part of that conversation. We will still need to land on an amount. And if we're looking for giving a wee bit of indication to staff where that's sitting, for myself, that's sitting at 19%. And it's basically not funding the Three Waters depreciation. And the reason my sitting is there at the moment is that I think that the balance that we do hand over to Three Waters and whether or not they're going to need to fully depreciate like we're expected to is still undecided. We don't quite know where the other councils are to be matching that, but we know there's a mixture of unfunding of depreciation. And I don't think we're going to fix that issue all in one go now this year, and I do not think when we look at things like 45% by any stretch, our community's in a space where they can afford that. People out there are also dealing with massive costs, and as much as 45% would put us in a level standing, we can say we've got a balanced budget and we're putting ourselves in the right position moving forward. I can't hand on heart stand in front of my community and say for them right now that's the right thing to do. So any decision we make under that is making a decision that's recognising that we're not still putting the council in the financial position we need to, but we also do have simplifying local government sitting in front of us, which is basically saying we recognise the system's broken and we need to find a new way. The long-term plan is not going to fix everything because within by the time we get to it, we're well under a year before we need to be really starting to move into those conversations. But we need to change the way this is operating. It's not working, and this is a hold the line suggestion that I'm coming out with that we won't need to land on. But I guess I'm just trying to say we probably need to start giving staff a wee bit of indication, because when we're talking 9 through to 45%, to ask them to try and set their budgets last minute on that gap and that variance is probably asking a little bit much. So based on that, Councillor Schlack.
I've spent a fair bit of time looking into the whole depreciation, and particularly on the free waters issue, and what is actually going to be the net effect of all that. And things that you have mentioned, Mayor Mel, in terms of where are the other councils, in terms of net water assets, etc., etc. And from my point of view and discussions I had with staff, in particularly around this, I tend to agree that the free waters depreciation is something that will be sorted out with the CCO in due time. And that is based on the information and the time that I have put in there. In terms of consultation, again, it goes back to, which wasn't quite a question to Mandy, but probably should have, is what are we actually going to gain with it? We're going for consultation and asking our members, would you like a rate rise? I already know the answer to that. Now, is there really that sort of value? What other things have changed in the LTP that warrants that? Having said all that, I think engagement, again, back to what I said in first instance, we've been at this for weeks. We now have a good understanding about dead cats and where we're going. I think engagement is going to be extremely important to our community, and also from a point of risk. Because as Amanda has very thoroughly explained, the tiniest thing only has to go wrong and we have no money to fix the problem. It's as simple as that. That is not a consultation, that is engagement and explanation. And that's where I sit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Schlack. I appreciate that. Was it Councillor Thowning?
If it was the 19%, how close does that get us to the debt cap, Amanda? At the best guess.
Yeah, I haven't done the numbers, but what we were proposing, going to the 9%, we were sitting at 166% of the debt cap, so it would be lower than that. So maybe around 160 or something versus the 175% cap.
And practically speaking, if we were to borrow that 9 million to pay for the depreciation, which is an unusual thing to do, but that would be the case, would we take that cash and then use that to pay off debt in the meantime, leaving that depreciation on the books, therefore net out the interest to close to zero, and then hand that all over to Southern Waters at the end for them to manage to their liking? Or how would that work?
Our policy is not to borrow for operating costs, so depreciations and operating costs. So we would rate for the $9 million depreciation, and that would come in as cash rates income, and then it would go into our reserves and add to the value, like the net value that they get. So where I was talking before, instead of the net value of 400 million, it would be 409. Does that answer the question?
No, I might have misunderstood the 19% option possibly.
Yeah, I wonder if you. Oh, sorry, it wasn't funding depreciation, it was funding the operating deficit of last year, and then it was also including that 2% increase, so it wasn't going a long way, but it wasn't sitting in the depreciation space.
Yeah, so if we're not funding that depreciation, would be borrowing it, would we?
Depreciation is just an accounting thing. It's on paper. So we don't actually have cash for depreciation ever. So, like you think of your typical household costs, you have your revenue, you have your expenditure, and you have your profit. So forgetting depreciation for a moment, we would just be making our revenue and expenditure match. If we took option 3, 19% increase and funded that 5 million deficit, our revenue would cover all of our day-to-day operating costs. When you add depreciation into the mix, that is when you have to increase the revenue to pay for that, to put aside that money in a reserve, but not physical money for future years. And so if that's where we decided in the LTP that we wouldn't, because depreciation is for future years and we're debt funding a lot of that water new capex at the moment. So the ratepayers are already kind of paying the interest on that debt, paying for that now anyway. So we didn't see the necessity to also put aside that rate funding for future years. So that's where we were happy with that 9 million deficit, not rate funding for it. So we're making a loss.
Now,
So the revenue was $9 million less than the expenditure when depreciation was included.
I have Councillor Linwood and Lewis in front, but I also am really aware that we're 5 minutes into our break. There won't be any time if we do take questions further. So what we might do is park this now and move into our meeting at 15:15, when we'll be able to discuss the engagement versus consultation, but it gives us a wee bit of a space to sort of start that conversation from. So thank you for your time and for staff support for this, and we'll continue this conversation off in about 10 minutes time.